We're going to dive right in. And you might be wondering, like, why would we talk about this on a motherhood podcast? And that's a really important question. And to me, I think it's such an important topic because, especially if you are a millennial, but really from any generation, you unfortunately probably were exposed to porn at one point or another. So it has shaped your adolescence, your motherhood journey in some way, whether you want it to or not. These types of images, and I think these videos that we've been exposed to, whether it's only been, very soft core Playboy or Maxim, all the way to unfortunately explicit porn, has unfortunately influenced us in some way, right? And so a lot of the time we're asking ourselves, how can we rewrite the script for our children? Especially, well, it doesn't really matter if you're raising girls or boys, because this is going to influence their future relationships, and also, not to sound weird or creepy, but how they perceive their parents, right? And like what they think is normal in a relationship. So unfortunately, porn is ubiquitous. It's all around us. There's really no escaping it. Like, you have to go so far out of your way to put child locks and controls on devices nowadays just to make sure porn doesn't infiltrate your home. Fortunately, this isn't an issue right now because my kids are so young, but we are hearing like the average age that kids are exposed to porn nowadays, I think, is around like 9 years old, give or take a year or two. And that's going to fly by, right? So I do think it's up to us moms to take the offensive approach, not the defensive approach. That's one part of this conversation, but I wanted to bring Isabella on too because she has a wonderful masterclass all about porn, which I've actually taken myself, and I can really vouch for this because I, unfortunately, as a former, I don't know about you, Isabella, but just in the former liberal feminist circles I personally was in New York City, especially several years ago, there was rhetoric that porn can be ethical and even pro-woman, especially if it's directed by a woman. And it's like gentle, right? So I want to hear your thoughts on debunking that myth and why porn is not a form of empowerment and why it's not neutral. Because something else I grew up with was, I'm not pointing fingers or like naming names specifically, it's more so like cultural, but just like, men watch porn and it's just normal. It's just something that like almost all men do. And fortunately, I know that's not the case. Your podcast was really instrumental in teaching that to me, Isabella. And I'm very fortunate to be in a marriage where porn has no place in our marriage, never has. But I know this is not the case for many mothers out there, and it's doing devastating harm to their marriage. So, Isabella, why don't we start with, I guess if you're open to talking about it, do you remember like your first ever introduction to porn, or like when you were exposed to it, if at all ever?
Oh, yes. I remember it explicitly, pun intended. It was explicit, and I remember where I was. It was actually an orgy.
Wow.
I like put on the TV. I was at my babysitter's apartment, and to this day, I don't know if it was a VHS tape that was like, that someone in her family owned, or if it was later in the day. And in New York City, there was Channel 35. And after a certain hour, you knew that porn was going to be on Channel 35. And so, like, at sleepovers, you'd have the one, like, we were curious, and you'd, like, pretend like you forgot to lift your finger off the remote control, and you would land on Channel 35. So I don't know if it was on TV late at night or if it was a VHS owned by her husband, or like one of her kids. I don't know, but it was an orgy, and I didn't know what sex was. So when I saw it, I was just in shock. Like, I didn't, my brain was not ready to understand that, first of all, like what sex was, and then that there were all these other ways to put body parts in other body parts with multiple people, and they were in like a room. Like, it was absolutely horrifying. And I had very like good relationship with my mom, and still do, and understood that when I see bad things, I come and I tell my mom.
Yeah.
And so I took my mom into the only room in our apartment that doesn't have a window, because I just felt like what I was about to say, like no one else could hear because it was so horrific. And I told my mom in the bathroom, and she gasped. Obviously, she was horrified that, like, I'd been exposed to this. And I believe that is when we had the sex conversation.
Wow.
Because it needed, there was no way she was going to explain that without telling me what sex was. And so that was my really, like, first and pretty much, like, only exposure as, like, a minor, other than, like, being at a sleepover with girlfriends and someone, you see, like, a flash.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful that was actually my pretty much my only prolonged exposure, more than, like, a minute as a minor.
And how old were you?
I need to ask my mom. I think I must have been 6, 7, 8, around that time. I want to say
6,
7 or
7, or
8.
8. Wow. So you and I were about the same age during my first exposure to porn too. I remember I was 7, and I don't feel comfortable sharing on this podcast. I mean, I know you know, but I don't feel comfortable sharing here. But I will say it was a relative. And I happened to come across a VHS. And the other issue was I had a TV with a VHS in my bedroom, which nowadays is like a big no-no for kids to have all that access and freedom. So I was always very curious, and I put this VHS in. And, because a lot of times you'll hear boomers say something like, well, it was no big deal. We just always came across, a stash of Playboys. Right. And it was just like very soft core. Not ideal too, but it's so different. Like, people talk about how explicit porn is nowadays, like online porn, but it was also actually explicit in the mid to late 90s. There were very explicit versions just on VHS. Yeah. And it was like up close oral sex. That was my first ever exposure. Yeah. And just so confusing and complicated. But it also, I think for some people like you, it seems like it had this. And for me too, I was repulsed. I was confused. But I think it depends on the child's temperament, because it also unfortunately planted a seed in my head that I didn't have before. A seed of, like, almost insatiable curiosity. And, like, oh, I wonder what else is out there. But, like, it's not like enjoying it, but just so curious, kind of like watching a train wreck. And I think it just depends on the child's temperament. Like, you can't look away. And that's really the problem with it. And we know it does change your brain. So I want to talk about, can you just rattle off what are some of the long-term effects of porn exposure? Like, what is it doing to the brain, and how does it affect relationships we have, even, romantically, let's say?
Okay, so I want to, like, before, I think I'm going to answer that question by
Yeah.
going back to something that you said earlier, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
like, as you mentioned earlier in the episode, like, where we were talking about, like, I am not an expert on neuroscience and the brain chemistry and what happens to men and women, respectively, when they watch pornography, or at what age does it traumatize a child. But there is a great book called Your Brain on Porn that does go into that. It's more geared towards men. But you opened the episode, as a kind of warning to parents to be able to understand, like, how to, prevent their kids, to give them a better chance at, avoiding porn. But I think the problem that nobody wants to talk about is the normalization of porn in marriages, in relationships. And there's no... Sorry, there's a fly. There's no, like, I used to think I could tell who were the couples that would maybe have an inclination to have, like, porn addiction in their relationship. And over the past, like, 6 to 7 years, as I, unpacked all of the harms of pornography and had many discussions with women have opened up to me about porn addiction. And I've worked with women who have porn addiction, like, who have porn addicted partners, and who themselves also have porn addiction. There's no, like, type. And maybe that's obvious to your listeners, but it wasn't obvious to me. And so, like, I maybe just want to touch on, like, 3 like, reasons I see that women are tolerating it in their marriage, first and foremost. And this is relevant. This is, like, relevant to the like, your experience, your first exposure, which was, it was a family, it was a relative. So, right, if one or both parents are consuming porn, that means it's in the house. That means it's accessible. And as we know, like, we don't have full control over when a kid opens a door or gets in a drawer or finds something that they're not supposed to find and sees something that they're not supposed to see. And obviously, when you leave the house, like, you lose control over how that can happen. But in your home, you have control.
Right.
You're
Lots.
choosing. Yes, you have control. And so unfortunately the first exposure stories, like you mentioned, it's not uncommon that would happen in the home. I was in like basically my second mother's home when I saw it, right? I wasn't at school, it wasn't on an iPad.
Yeah.
It was in like I would say as close as a relative, in my experience too. So
Yeah.
I actually I want to actually pull up my notes. Sorry for a second.
Oh, no, you're totally fine. I think that's such a good point, right? Because I'm just so grateful it's not a part of my marriage, but it still amazes me how common and normal it is, and women are so accepting of it. You don't often hear about the reverse, where it's like a man who's not into porn who has to put up with his wife's porn addiction. I don't know if you've heard of that. I haven't heard of that yet, even though we do know that women consume porn too.
I've heard of it in like lesbian relationships for sure, where one woman wants to watch it and the other one doesn't.
Yeah.
But I think even like going like even further back, I think that some women are in denial, or they truly like genuinely do not understand that this is a harmful thing for their marriage, for their husband. Some people do, and they're like, they want the guy to quit, but he doesn't. Like going back, like I want to just name like the first reason why
Yes.
I think it's like still in relationships and still in the home is because the woman doesn't have the vernacular. She doesn't have the language to articulate. Maybe because she hasn't done her own research, or maybe because it's too scary to contemplate, or it's just so normalized in her friend circle, and she's grown up with the narrative that all men watch porn. But there is something about it, like a spidey sense, where she's thinking like, this is like, this makes me feel a bit weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the first step. Like it's a bit weird, but the thought of bringing it up is so daunting because she doesn't have like the ammo
Yes.
to be able to describe why it's wrong, why it makes her uncomfortable. And then the second reason that I see is, going back to your question about or you mentioned the narrative like feminist porn, empowering porn, is that the consumer in the relationship of porn, which is, almost always the male partner, is bringing up all sorts of defenses, like it's ethical, or, sex work is work, and this is entrepreneurship, or he is also, simultaneously downplaying it, and saying, well, it's not as bad, at least I'm not, it's not a prostitute, that's
Right.
bad. Like prostitution is bad, but what I'm doing is, consensual or ethical,
Right.
which is not the case, which we can get into. And then I want to just mention the third reason, which is what, again, I think it's still making its way into the home, which is that the mother or the wife is enabling it, right? So
She doesn't want to. She doesn't want to disrupt too much. Maybe they've already had fights about other issues, and it's kind of like when you give your kid, a snack. You want to just keep the peace. Right? You don't want conflict, especially if there's already other stressors in your life going on. You're just trying to keep the peace wherever you can.
100%. 100%. Like the enabling part, like women get defensive about this one because, like, I'm not suggesting it's easy to leave a porn addicted partner. However, like the choice to stay in the relationship is saying this is okay.
Right. With alcoholism or gambling. I mean,
Yes.
I think women can be in denial, like, well, gambling is a real addiction and a real problem, especially because if you're gambling away your life savings, now you're going to feel that impact more. But if the money's still there, the house is still there, well, he's not a drinker, he's not a smoker, he doesn't do drugs. I think some women fail to see that porn is a drug on your brain.
For sure. And these are the women that also get addicted by proxy. Like they get addicted because their partners are addicted, and it's too painful to feel excluded from the sexual relationship that the man has with pornography, right? He's developing
Yes.
emotional, I would say, I even go far as to say like psychospiritual and of course sexual relationship with complete strangers on a regular basis. And so, it's kind of like if you can't beat them, join them, a mentality that I see happen in mostly in heterosexual relationships. So like the choice to stay with a porn addicted partner is the choice to say this is okay for me. Right. And this is a really painful point. And like you mentioned with your, in your relationship, you don't have it. And I don't really think it's like a clear category of like the guys that watch it and the guys that don't. I think
Same.
that I think it's true that most men do watch porn, but the like caveat is like a man who loves you will quit.
Right. And if you don't have the willpower, because understandably, if you're actually truly addicted, it's not about willpower. It's about like discipline at that point. You have to seek outside counsel. You probably will not have the willpower to quit on your own, even if you want to, because your brain has changed. You need to work with someone who can help you quit. I actually want to ask you, just to play devil's advocate, I want to run a scenario by you. Let's say you have a married couple and both equally actually enjoy watching porn alone and together, and they're both genuinely okay with the other one watching it. And they're watching what they think is ethical porn, female directed, the women get to choose their scenes, whatever is ethical. So let's say they're like, what's wrong with that? We enjoy it. We're happily married. Nobody's hiding anything. We're not watching any abuse or any trafficking. So what's the problem? Why fix what ain't broken?
Well, they can never know for sure that they're not watching minors have sex. They can never know for sure that the women and the men that they're watching are not victims of sex trafficking. It's all like you're operating on just like good faith. Like, well,
Yeah.
I think, like in the case of Erica Lust, like, okay, so you know that the people who are being temporarily like rented for the insides of their bodies are getting STI testing. Right? Or like get sushi on their lunch break, and that's supposed to be like a good deal. And that is like relative to sex trafficking in third world country, like that is like, you could say, okay, well, there is a distinction, and they are still being rented on a short-term basis for the insides of their bodies. And I think like I come back to the question of like, serendipity. I think Serendipity learned this from Sam Berg, who taught the masterclass that's hosted
Yes.
on Whose Body Is It? And I always come back to this question, which is, rather than focusing on, do you think people have the right to sell themselves, like, for sex and for reproduction? Do you believe that people have the right to buy and rent other people? Right? And that's a more difficult question to answer, because most people will say, yeah, if she chooses it, it's fine. But, do you want to live in a world where people can rent and buy the insides of other people? Do you think that should be legal? I would also bring up, so the couple, back to your question, the couple who is defensive of their use of pornography, I would ask, like, if I were in a room with them, I would ask them to show me, which is also something I learned from the class from Sandberg, which is, I would ask them to show me what they're watching. Because a lot of people will say that it's like wholesome or kosher or whatever, and then when they're actually confronted with what they're watching and have to be witnessed by someone else for what they're consuming, it's a bit sticky. It's a bit icky. I would guess that they would be reluctant to show you.
Yeah.
I've watched the feminist porn as an adult, and it's violent. It's degrading. It's not, she leans more, like Erica Lust, as an example, leans more on, kink, which is just like a fancy way to say like violence and fetish in sex. So but I think we might not be able to convince the couple that loves to consume porn together.
Yeah.
It's generally an issue when one or both people are not being honest with themselves. But I do think there are scenarios where people are living, I think there are many people living happily as porn consumers, and
Right.
they see no reason to question their use. So I don't know that we would be able to convince them necessarily, but yeah, I would lean on, the talking points of, you don't actually know the age of the people that are having sex with one another. Often the women, this is something I learned from Sandberg as well, that it's not uncommon that the women are on drugs. Like I think she mentioned Quaaludes.
Yes.
And then in terms of it being like ethical and like a work, I would say what other profession is, are you dealing with the possibility of like anal prolapse? Like what other job description comes with anal prolapse? None.
Yeah.
And I have an episode on my podcast with Ellie Arrow, who looked at the health records of legal prostitutes. So they call them sex workers in New Zealand, I believe. And so in New Zealand, prostitution is legal. And because of that, they have labor laws and unions, and the women were like their medical records were like documented very tediously. And so because of that, so it's horrible. On the one hand, it's horrible that it was legalized. But on the other hand, we have all this data to say like, these are what the bodies of the women who work in the porn industry go through. This is what they go through. This is what they have. And then I remember she named an example. She gave an example of a woman who became pregnant as a sex worker and was like she got like a short maternity leave. Right? And then had
Wow.
to go
Which
back
in
to
America is
work.
amazing, sadly.
Right? Like imagine like if you're really so committed to this being work, then you have to understand that you would be required to continue working through your pregnancy, and then whatever they gave her, 8 to 12 weeks of maternity leave.
God.
But I remember, I wish I could remember more specifically, but I do remember she named an example of a pregnant prostitute who had to go back to work shortly after giving birth. So right, you make it work. And then the other example I want to give, which I learned from Dr. Verling, who's also a guest on my podcast. We did an episode together like 4 or 5 years ago about the racist origins of gender neutral language.
Yes.
And she's brilliant. And not in that episode, but just in a different conversation, she gives the example of like scaling, right? Okay, so if you believe that it's work and you're that, super lib femme couple that loves to consume porn and you think, sex work is work, then why not let's test that theory and scale it, right?
Yes.
So we understand like in women's prisons and in men's prisons, they have jobs. All sorts of jobs, all sorts of vocations, and they earn money. So if sex work is work and surrogacy is work, then let's put women in prison to work, right? How would you feel about scaling that theory and that being a job that women in prison are offered, and they're paid more, right? So then you have, like perhaps you get more money than, sewing or, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with prison jobs, but like.
Or like sweeping or mopping or, some kind of cleaning, working the cafeteria. Yeah, when you put it that way, right? I mean, it's quite disturbing. I'm worried that in some circles, maybe they're numb to that idea. Like, yeah, that sounds reasonable because we're just numb to women being objectified lately in general. But to me, it sounds quite alarming when you put it that way.
Yeah, and it all sounds nice and good when you have that one friend you went to college with who has like a really successful OnlyFans account, and like that's not what porn like that's not the kind of porn industry we're talking about. It is it is one of like the outer layers of the industry, but in the class with Sam, it's a really, really critical look at pornography, live pornography, like with real people, in what she calls just filmed prostitution.
Yes.
Right? It's prostitution on camera. And I wanted to mention the revenge porn too.
Yeah. Oh, terrifying.
Most people who are consuming porn, right, you're projecting the character that, these people are playing. The last thing most people are thinking about is, especially because like what's called amateur porn is one of the most popular categories. I don't know if that's still the case, but I think it's people want to feel like it's natural, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so because amateur porn is such a huge, I think like Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian, like sex video type leaking stuff, because it's such a big category. Lots of people end up having videos that they thought were private shared with an intimate partner. It's put on the internet, and then you have legal cases, and it's almost impossible to get it taken down. So when you're watching what looks like amateur porn, you don't actually know if it was filmed in a studio and made to look like amateur, or if it's actually someone who's in a legal battle with her ex-husband because he uploaded their, sex videos to Pornhub. Um, so I wanna give men the benefit of the doubt and say that most of them have not thought that far, in
Yeah.
advance of, like, because it's much easier to just enjoy the ride.
Mm-hmm.
But back to you mentioned that, so porn is not in your relationship, and I just want to go back to the point of, like, I don't think there's such different men, like the ones who watch and the ones who don't. They're the ones that are willing to quit because they love
Yeah.
you, and I don't
Yes.
even I don't even really know what I believe around the addiction narrative, because,
Tell me more.
like, I know, just generally speaking, like,
Yeah.
because I see, like, I think we can all collect examples in our like, anecdotally, in our with our peers, like, I have friends who smoked for 15 years, they quit cold turkey easy, and
True.
others really struggle. I've heard the same with porn, with my partners. I had two partners who had already quit before we had been together, so it was a non-issue. And I've had other partners who are just like, done, consider it done, right? Like,
Like the relationship?
no, consider my porn use done,
I see.
because I can see that this is a non-negotiable for you,
I see.
right? And when I think
Yes.
about the guys who were more reluctant, it's like, they actually weren't that into me. They actually didn't love me. I've just had so many conversations with women about this recently. It's like, yeah, before I met my husband, but, when I met my husband, when we were dating, he totally watched porn, and I told him right off the bat, this is a deal breaker, and he's like, never again.
Wow.
Because
But how
he
do you
was
know they're
terrified.
secretly watching it?
That's another question. No, well, that's a bigger
Right.
question. Are you with a liar? Are you with, like, a
Right.
sociopath? I mean,
Right.
for that, you would have to just get to know him for
Yes.
a while to know that he's not a liar. And if he's open about, like, if he's telling you he's an addict, then I think it would be reasonable to have regular, like, checks of his phone, or be in
Yes.
counseling. But that's, like, up to you. Like, do you want to marry an addict? Do you want to continue a relationship with an addict? Some women will say yes, and women will say no. For
Yes.
me, it was always like, no, I'm not. No, it's just a no. So I would like to, like, kind of make it all tidy. So I don't know,
Yeah.
but I do lean towards the camp of, like, if he's afraid to lose you and you've made it a non-negotiable, he will quit.
Right.
But if you're saying it's a problem and you're staying and you're continuing to sleep with him, which is a normal thing to do if you're still living together, obviously, if he's your freaking partner, you probably still want to have sex with him, unless it's so bad that he's enacting violent things, on you, that he's learning from sex, because it's conscious and also subconscious. It's a manual. It's a manual for sex. Like, porn is
Right.
so I just think women need to be, like, stronger and harsher about it. And, like, I think what comes up, okay, this is where I'm going. Like, I think
Yeah.
what comes up in the process of removing it from the family, and particularly the romantic relationship, is you're uncovering the fundamental respect that a man has for you,
Yes.
and the well-being of the family, which is the same thing. Right? If he's like,
Yes.
no, the kids will never see it, and disregarding what it's doing to you, that's a problem, because whatever's happening to you is happening to the whole family. If you
Right.
are not healthy and well, no one is healthy and well. So I think it's, like, one of just those icky things that and, like, the same you could say for childbirth ed, or, like, birthplace, it brings up sticky things about a man's fundamental respect for his partner, his wife, his girlfriend.
Yes. Yeah, that is really interesting. I do want to go back to just one point about ethical porn, though, because I know you mentioned some very true and extreme examples that maybe listeners hadn't considered, like when porn stars get anal prolapse, right? But what if people are like, I'm watching ethical porn. It's just it's so mild. It's so Like the actors are acting like they're in love. There's no choking, there's no biting, there's no BDSM or anything. Like it's just oral. And there's like not even penetration. Is just oral, is that harmful to consume that type of porn?
I would say so. I mean, oral is definitely penetration. If a penis is going in an orifice of the body, I would definitely consider that penetration, even though, we can't get pregnant that way.
Right.
You could still get, a sexually transmitted infection.
Yeah.
You know, there are other things that can happen. So what would I say? I would say it's still all pretend. Like you're projecting
Yeah.
that it's wholesome. You don't know how many takes it took to get that really wholesome shot that seems really
Yes.
pleasurable for everyone. Like, do you think it's pleasurable for any woman to be giving a blowjob like on and off for like 4 hours? Like, do you know any
Exactly.
woman in her normal life that gives her partner a blowjob like on and off for a number of hours? I'm just like estimating how long it would
Yeah.
take to do a shot. I actually don't know. It could actually be more, but whatever you're seeing is definitely not the first and only time she giving a blowjob that day.
I agree. I think there's so many issues at hand. It's the fact that it's actually not ethical as it's being portrayed. We're supporting an industry that is exploiting its workers for financial gain. But there's also a spiritual element. Like when a married couple, when these individuals watch porn of any kind, it actually doesn't matter what kind it is. Of course, there's a spectrum of like violent and grotesque to just oral. Spiritually, that's taking away what they could be instead giving to one another in real life instead of to complete strangers that they have no relation to on a screen. Like, we cannot discount the fact that that spiritually has to be harming the marriage.
It's
Yeah,
cheating. I mean, it's
right,
completely cheating.
right.
I completely think it's cheating, and I think it's important that both partners sincerely believe that. Like,
Yes,
if my partner, my current boyfriend, like if
yeah.
we were clear from the beginning, if I were to watch, he would consider that cheating, and if he were to watch, I
Wow.
would consider that cheating. And like, women and men deserve that kind of clarity from
Yes.
their intimate partners. Like, if you need clarity on anything, I think it would need to be that you need to be able to trust. You need to be able to trust, and you need to be able to talk about what constitutes cheating in your relationship. Like following
Boundaries.
Instagram half naked models.
Yeah.
Like, saw this post on integrity recently from a relationship quote. Jillian Trekkie. Do you know who she is?
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't follow her. I'm not really sure.
She was like, it was a post about integrity, and I loved it. And she was like, integrity is any conversation that you would have without your partner, you would have with your partner, right?
Right.
With some specifically with someone with the opposite sex, or if you're a same-sex couple.
Oh, yeah.
So, would you do it in front of your partner, right? And so in the example of the couple who they love to watch porn together, it's not relevant. But
Right.
thinking about, would I do this in front of my partner, right? Would it be in integrity to do this? And I think it's so sad, but I don't think that most women think they have a choice anymore. Like, that it's too much to ask for. It might rock the boat. I also wanted to bring up, does that answer your question before I wanted to bring up another point?
Yeah, yeah, it does. And I want to hear this point too, because then I have a story to share with you after that.
So, like, another course with Sam Berg, which is a 3-hour class, and the goal is for you to remove the porn from your life and your relationship. And so
Yes.
it's not a how-to on how to get your significant other to quit, because we don't know how to do that. It's about
Right.
understanding what porn is, what it isn't, and then you figuring out what is your boundary.
Yes.
Going from there, I think a huge gap in this conversation, which is why I invited her to do this class, is just like, why is porn bad? Like, all the questions that you're asking me, like debunking all the lib fem myths about porn being ethical and all that. And one of the most like obvious things about porn, which she kind of opened the class with, which is that porn is insanely racist.
Yeah.
in like the
It
dominant
actually
culture,
is.
in like pop culture, you will get canceled in a second if you were to say the N-word.
Yep.
In porn, black women are the like lowest, like they're the most degraded. The
So
most,
objectified,
the most.
so dehumanized.
She mentioned like, and I don't watch enough porn to know. I mean, I've probably seen porn less than 5 times.
Yeah.
One of those times was the hypnosissy porn, which we could also mention, and then
Scary.
talk
That's what I
kids.
learned about from you.
Yeah, so I can't like say she is a porn expert and unfortunately has watched a lot for research purposes and also worked with women exiting porn and prostitution. And she in the class talked about that black women are almost always depicted in like animal prints, wearing animal prints. Not depicted, they're actually human. It's not a illustration. They're wearing
Right.
animal prints, so it's so degrading.
Yeah.
No one has a problem canceling someone for being racist, but for some reason, the same like liberal, porn watching people, like as soon as you talk about it in the context of porn, it's not allowed.
Yeah. That is very interesting. And I wonder if that would even, if people would even connect the dots between, oh, black people are always depicted wearing leopard print or something. Sometimes you really have to spell it out for them because these messages are just so subliminal and they've been going on for like decades that I don't know if people very sadly have seen them depicted any other way in porn, as sad as that is.
The body hair thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Women should have body hair. Women shouldn't take off their body hair advocate, which and a huge thing that I've run into over the years as someone who doesn't remove their body hair is that I've met men who say they literally physiologically can't get off when they're intimate with a woman who has body hair.
It's very sad. And you mean all kinds or specific kinds? Or
Pubic, armpit,
yeah.
leg, but definitely pubic. I've met men who've told me that they will not go down on a woman. They will not go down on a woman who has not removed her pubic hair.
To me, that's a boy, not a man.
100%. But we have to look at, where their anchor is. Like they have a sexual
Yes.
anchor. Think of like Pavlov's experiment with the dogs and the saliva. Like these men have the most powerful, even more than like hunger, like sexual arousal. They have the really, really, really strong anchor to women without pubic hair. And so when it comes time to like bridge that, it's like there's a glitch. They're like,
I want to know because you had a guest on one of your podcast episodes who was talking about I think men over 40 are the last generation of men to have seen women, right, with pubic hair. Like we cannot guarantee that a man right now younger than 40, we cannot guarantee that he has not ever seen a woman with pubic hair. Am I getting that right?
so I wasn't a podcast guest. I do have an episode about body hair, but I had
Yeah.
made a post about it
Oh,
just from my lived
right. Okay.
experience. I was starting to
Okay.
think,
Yeah.
who are the men that I meet regularly who are like
Yeah.
either really appreciate it and actually the reverse, which is that they can't get off, like they're sexually not attracted to women who remove their hair because
Right.
it reminds them of a girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there are the men who have a fetish for it, and then there are the men who are just kind of like neutral, like what like kind
Yeah.
of just neutral about it. And what I started to notice was like, okay, well, what is the porn that they were watching at this age? And I started to think like,
Right.
I think men over 40, I would say most men under 40 have never seen a woman's natural body. And I can say that
Right.
the first time I saw pubic hair that had not been completely removed or trimmed or lasered or anything, I was at a birth and I was like maybe 26 or 27, and my jaw was on the floor.
Because you're like, this is like National Geographic. I've never seen this before.
I was in shock that I've been desensitized,
Yeah.
like I literally was like, oh, that's what it looks like when you don't
Right.
do anything to it, right? So
Right.
we're all recovering from like, what does a woman's body actually look like without, not just without porn, you know, in her life, in her marriage, but what does just her body look like without any alteration, like even a trim, right? So I don't mean to
Correct.
take this
So
into like a body hair, like
No, I
it's like,
wanted to go there actually. Because I think it's important, especially if you're a mom to a young girl. I know people might be like, what? Your daughter's not even 2. Why are you thinking about this? First of all, time flies. Second of all, I think it's good to just be many steps ahead of whatever's happening. And the messaging starts young because if these kids are coming across magazines or content on their friends' phones, and their first exposure to what a normal female body looks like is just totally bald, you know, I do think that that is harmful. It's very expensive and painful to upkeep. And it's, you know, you're not really doing it for yourself. You're always doing it for someone else's gaze. Now, I have heard this counter argument. And this was actually from friends in New York City, and a lot of them were in ballet. They're like, well, ever since I was like a tween, I like, you know, the feeling and the sensation of just shaving everything down there, like because I'm in ballet and I don't like any hair sticking out. So you'll always hear, like, I'm a swimmer, I have to shave everything. What do you have to say to some of those remarks?
I can kind of understand that perspective, like if it's like to enhance your sport performance or like a dance performance, but I also think like I'm pretty sure there were ballet dancers like at the turn of the century who like weren't inundated with the pressure to remove their body hair and they
Sure.
danced really beautifully. Like I just
Yeah.
don't like I can like kind of see where they're coming from, but it's also because they're used to it. Like I just don't believe
Yes.
any woman is inherently born with a desire to laser, you know, to go to pay a stranger to like deaden the hair follicles, like with
Yeah.
high intense laser heat technology. Like I just can't make sense of someone being born with that inclination. Now, of course, I used to shave my legs. Like I know what they're talking about, where you like
Right.
touch the part of your body and it's soft and it's smooth. But it's not a strong case to me, just because
Yeah.
we know that women have been dancing and men have been using their body for sports and all sorts of tournaments, and like Vikings like are really like, it just doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. Like if you can be a warrior with a ton of hair, and I just think it's not a strong case. But we get used to it, right? We get used to it, and our
Right.
partners get used to what we do. And so the
Yes.
thought of changing that can feel really, really scary, attraction wise. But when someone tells me they like the sensation of smooth legs, like, I completely understand. I also simultaneously like the sensation of a smooth leg, but what I like more is my body reflecting the physiological, biological state that I'm in, which is that I've gone through puberty.
Yeah, it's values, right? It's like you can understand that you like it, but that's where your values are. You're prioritizing that value. That makes sense. I get that.
But it is a rewire. I mean, the body hair, it's so relevant to the porn talk because there is a rewiring that has to happen
Yes.
when the cultural like message is that you're like stinky or dirty or like, not put together because you don't remove it. Like there is a path, there is a switch that happens, which I would imagine with porn as well. If you only pleasure yourself from watching other people be trafficked, there is a rewiring that has to happen, similar to women who can only get off, you know, from watching violent sex because
Yeah.
perhaps they were, you know, sexually abused as children. You hear that a lot, where like the anchor for sex is violence, and so she needs violence in order to orgasm, right? There's
Yes.
a whole rewiring that needs to happen, and I don't necessarily think it needs to take that much time. I think for some women it can, and for others it can happen very quickly. And I think like for the man that loves you, it's losing access to you that is the biggest motivation.
Yes.
And the children. But yeah, I think the biggest thing with the kids is getting really right with yourself and the relationship. And I also think it needs to be taught. Like I have friends, I'm not speaking from experience because I don't have children and I certainly don't have teenage children, but my friends who do have teenage children who have the same values around, you know, keeping porn out of their consciousness, they have more preventative talks with like, this is something that you're going to see at some point. This is what is happening, and this is why we're against it as a family. And, you know, at the age that you find appropriate, certainly after they know what sex is. But I think that's each family's choice in terms of when that's an appropriate conversation.
Only very recently learned, like, you can have these age appropriate conversations really as young as like 4 years old, maybe sometimes younger. But the younger they are, the more high level, biological, vague, and concise it is. Like, not even using the word porn with an almost 4-year-old. But we have a board book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. And it's a picture book. And it basically explains, like, you know, pictures that make you feel a certain way, like happy, like, you know, pictures of animals, this and that. But if you come across pictures, it doesn't show what it is, but the parts that are covered by underwear or a diaper, parts that, you know, are covered by a bathing suit, if you're seeing those parts in a picture and it tells you what to do step by step, like executive function, because little kids, they need that step by step guidance. Like, so first you close your eyes, you turn away, you find me or another adult, and you tell them what happened. I think that's key, because I didn't tell you this, but when I had a conversation with this relative about what I discovered when I was 7 and how I was upset and confused, whatever. I was asking so many questions. This relative did have, you know, the self-awareness to say, you can't look at that anymore, but it wasn't ever removed from my access. But then here's the real kicker. I was also told, when you turn 18, if you want, you can look at that, because that's the legal age. And for me, this goes so beyond what's legal and what's not. Something can be legal and ethically and morally corrupt. And I grew up with that belief that, oh, it's just because I'm too young. But when I'm 18, just like when I'm 18, you know, you can go to war. When you're 21, you can drink. And it's like, no, you know, right. That was such a confusing thing to be programmed with.
Totally. And we didn't even mention the AI porn, which totally blurs even more, you know, things. And I think, okay, this is a really sticky thing.
Yeah.
Sending your kids to people's homes where, you know, one or both partners are consuming porn for play dates, for overnights, like,
oh my gosh.
I want to see like communities talking about this. I want to see it's so taboo. It is so taboo. But like, you know, I think the question parents should ask themselves is like, do we want to be in close community, meaning like dinners, sleepovers, trips together, when we know that one or both partners is using porn, right? Not to villainize them, like not to say they can ever not become porn users, but right. Just seeing the situation as it is, given that we know how easy it is for someone to step in on someone watching porn. Yeah, people are more on their phones now than they're like doing it on TVs and VHS tapes like when we were growing up, but it's trauma.
It really is. And I think it can change how you walk into a relationship. Unfortunately, I had relationships where I was totally confused. The lines were blurred. There was no boundaries. I was, you know, because I grew up with one belief, like, well, all men watch porn, something you just put up with, or it's not bad if it's legal. Like, I cringe when I think about that time in my life before my marriage and like what I put up with. And that's like one of the motivators for me to like, okay, when my daughter's older, what kind of example do I want to set? What kind of conversations do I proactively want to have so that she's not coming to me after she's seen or heard something really vile? And yeah, these are like the dark talks that are not fun to have with our kids. But if we don't have them, they're going to have them from someone else that we don't like or trust, probably. And so, yeah, that's the stuff that really freaks me out. But about the body hair thing, too, I was thinking bathing suits they've gotten smaller and smaller to the point where they're floss. So when you mentioned the thing, like, about how, you know, maybe in the 1800s, they're not feeling the inclination to shave or wax. I agree with you that it's because they're not exposed to in the same way. And also I think porn even porn in the 70s, like full bush, right? And like that was cool. But also we have to remember these bathing suits were like shorts, you know, like they were very modest. And now I think ever since maybe the mid to late 90s, and then after that, it's like, even now I'm seeing bathing suit tops. It's like, it's just floss.
Floss.
Floss on top, floss on the bottom, just a constant wedgie. So that's also like why I think women had to, not had to, they felt inclined to get their, to do anal bleaching.
Oh
That was
my God,
also a part of
I
porn.
completely forgot about anal bleaching.
And labial bleaching. No joke.
And
I used to,
labioplasty.
oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, don't get me started.
Labioplasty.
I
Labio.
worked with someone years and years and years ago in her 20s who was telling me that she would try to bleach her own labia. And I'm like, there's no other reason you would think to do this aside from being exposed to porn that is more explicit, up close and personal with really bright fluorescent lights. And you're comparing yourself. Because I don't think that, I know for a fact that the previous generations did not have that inclination. And there were
No.
no close-up shots. It was just like full bush, normal
Yeah.
lighting, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Oh, you just reminded me of something. Oh, this is a constant battle that you brought up the bathing suits. This is a constant, like, daily battle that I have living as a sun lover who lives in a warm climate, who does not remove her body hair. Like,
Yeah,
I don't want to have a weird shorts tan, but I also don't want to wear the floss bathing suits. So it's
right.
not because not because I'm ashamed for people to see my pubic hair, but it does garner like unwanted attention, and it's
Right.
shocking for people. Just as I described my experience at the age of 26, for the first time seeing a woman who did not like even trim her pubic hair.
Yeah,
It's shocking. So
yeah,
people are gonna look, people are gonna gawk. I've been at the beach and seen men, take videos of women, not even pubic hair related, just because it's a
yeah.
thing that happens. This is why like most people put diapers on their babies now at the beach because they're
Yes.
like unfortunately
Yeah,
for women and children.
yeah.
But yeah, yes, I think that was totally a factor too because you weren't sacrificing like exposing your genitalia.
Right. It's like now it's like hanging out. That's like the expectation just for all to see. There's no more modesty.
And also just the Instagram organic bamboo companies who are featuring women with full body hair, like it's so pornographic. Like
I have not seen this yet.
it's like trending where these like whole like earthy brands that I buy
Yeah.
from.
Okay, yeah. I can imagine the brand names. Yeah, yeah.
I think it's like Indigo.
Yeah.
I
I was gonna say Indigo Luna.
No, please don't quote me that. I think it was maybe Hard the label. A couple like brands that make beautiful underwear and soft
Yeah.
clothing and organic fibers, blah blah blah. And they're sending you the message like this is earthy, this is beautiful, but they're getting clicks and they're getting likes and it's getting
Yeah.
views because it's pornified. Like you have a shot where you can see like you can almost see her labia. Like it's
Wow. So
yeah,
it's like
it's
a
not
bathing
like
suit
some
model
she's
sitting a
laying
certain way.
like the angle where she's on the bed. Like imagine you're standing upright and you're taking a photo of a woman on the bed. So you're getting
Yeah.
an angle like where the closest thing to you is her yoni and the
Oh
farthest
my
thing
gosh.
from you is her head.
Right.
Like it's the angle. So I think we need to be careful about that stuff too. Like the repackaging of like
Of
earthy
porn.
body stuff being also porny, and then like I'm always checking myself like how am I posing, how am I
Yeah.
being, like it's impossible. Like we called the class remove porn from your relationship and your life, from your
Yeah.
relationship and bedroom, excuse me, but like you're never gonna get to a perfect score because
No.
we're all inundated, but we can mitigate, and there's certainly tons of stuff we can do with our kids that you mentioned, like body literacy, like good feelings,
Yes.
bad feelings, like the picture book you mentioned sounds amazing. Basic body literacy, developing like strong attachment so that if they do see something or something is God forbid done to them, that they come to you right away. And then cleaning house, like making sure that whatever you're preaching, you're embodying in yourself, in your marriage, in your home.
Exactly, because if we're just telling our kids, porn is bad, don't watch it, and now we're sneaking off to watch it or watching with our husbands or our husbands are watching it, you're not living in integrity. In the same way, I remember going to high school with kids who told me, not a lot, it wasn't very popular back then, but their parents would say, don't smoke, cigarettes. And this was in the late 90s, early 2000s. But then when they got to a certain age, like at senior year of high school, their parents said, well, we never stopped smoking, so we'd be hypocrites if we told you not to smoke. So here, come join us for a cigarette since you're 18 now. I knew of a girl that happened to. So you really have to walk the walk and just control the controllables. You can control if you access porn in your home proactively. You can't control if it comes at you in an ad or on a billboard. But that's why I think it's good to just drip those conversations in, yeah, with your kids. Don't let them come to you. You know?
Totally. Yes.
It's too late then. Yeah. And ethical porn is not ethical for lots of reasons.
And
People are still being exploited.
And if like your listeners want more details and like to go point by point and like have the rebuttals handy, we went into some of them lightly, but if you really want to be like versed, and when your friend confronts you or your boyfriend confronts you or your husband confronts you about, you know, like why it's wrong, that this is exactly why I made the class, because I was stuck like years ago when I was having these conversations, like intuitively I was like, I don't know, but then they would be prepared with all of their pro porn talking points, and I didn't know what to say. And it was only through reading and interviewing women and learning from women and many, many conversations with women that I respect who are actually helping women exit the industry and who have been in the industry themselves that I now feel confident, like if I'm meeting a random person to talk about it. So that's why the course exists, so that you don't get stuck in the, you know, you don't get frozen when you're confronted with the case for porn.
Yes, that was actually exactly me too. And that's what triggered me to take this course. And now I feel so much more articulate and able to not just play defense, but offensively in a very objective way share porn it's not ethical. It's really not helping anyone, because I actually was stuck in the loop of kind of believing like, maybe it could be ethical. Like, and I feel so silly and embarrassed for admitting that. But I thought like, oh yeah, like maybe if they're being paid right. And like, you know, I actually, when I was in my early 20s, there was an ex who told me like, but what if this is the only thing they're good at? They enjoy doing it and they're paid well. And I remember at first saying to him, like I did a full 180 loop. At first I was like, there's no chance. And he said that about strippers too. He's like, maybe this stripper actually isn't good at other things that you and I would be good at. Maybe she struggled in school. You know, so at first you start to have empathy for this stripper archetype. Like, okay, yeah, she's not good at academics. You're right. So, and we don't want her to be on the street. Okay. So then he's like, you know, maybe waiting tables doesn't work with her schedule and she needs a way to feed her kids.
Yes. And her grandma needs diabetes medication.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started to fall for it. And then I start to feel bad for me projecting my own views and beliefs on it. I'm like, okay. So he's like, so what? You're going to shame this stripper because she makes good money doing something that doesn't align with your values? I was so gaslit. He was like 10 years older than me. I was so confused that conversation would never happen today because of these great talking points. So yeah, definitely take the course. Yeah.
I think in the Q&A, I think we maybe, we did a bit of role play. We did Q&A. I can't actually, anyway, we covered that in the class is what I
Yes.
More in depth.
Yes, because I remember relating to that. Like, yep, that sounds like a conversation I had 15 years ago in New York. But yeah, so this is really interesting. I'm glad we got to talk about this because it's something I was really shy to discuss. You know, there's just so much shame around it. And I'm glad that it's more normalized now to talk about this. We shouldn't have to hide behind closed doors, and women should feel empowered to stop their husbands in their tracks if that's happening in your marriage. Yeah. So go check out Isabella if you don't already at Whose Body Is It? Go check out the class. I will link to the masterclass in the show notes. And anything else you want to share before we leave?
I just want to say thank you so much for having me on again. And thank you for sharing your first exposure porn story to your audience. It's like, it's a really, it's a vulnerable thing to share and to see ourselves as children and go back to that time. And yeah. So thank you for sharing with the audience, and I'm excited to see the response and what everyone says.
Yes. Thank you, and likewise. All right, we'll see you guys.